Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah. We continue reading from Imam Al-Ghazali's On Disciplining the Soul, Kitab Riyadat al-Nafs, translated by Timothy Winter Abdul Hakim Murad. We have reached an exposition of evidence handed down from men of spiritual insight and provided in the law to the effect that the way to cure the disease of the heart is by renouncing one's desires, and that the stuff of such diseases is following desires. We began in the last session reading this chapter, and we did not um, finish reading it. It's a bit long, so we'll continue reading, inshallah. If you have been following the reading, the very last thing that we have read was a statement attributed to Al-Hasan, and we said this is when Al-Hasan is mentioned just like this without any other qualification. It's Al-Hasan Basri, wallahu alam. He said, an unruly riding beast is no greater need of a strong bridle than is your soul. Which means that the soul is would revolt, rebel. It's not 100% tamed, like, or that there's something lacking. So we said that you need to put it on a leash, in a sense, to control it. Otherwise, it's just like it. If it's really without any checks and balances, without any control, without any boundaries, it might basically be on the loose. Said Yahya ibn Mu'adh al-Razi. We continue reading. Fight your soul with the swords of self-discipline. These are 4: eating little, sleeping briefly, speaking only when necessary, and tolerating all the wrongs done to you by men. For eating little slays desire. Remember when the Prophet ﷺ said in the hadith, advising youngsters to do get married. Youngsters, we don't mean they are mature, they are so the youngsters, those who did not get married and they're still at a young age, they are better off getting married. And من استطاع منكم الباءة فليتزوج. If you could afford it, do get married. If you cannot afford it, and this is really why I'm mentioning it here, if you cannot afford it, do fast. فعليه بالصوم فإنه لو جاء. It's a form of protection. So that's one thing about killing the desire. The second thing about not getting married, and it seems that people are postponing marriage. They would typically, if it's for men, though the same age, it means different things for women. So you finish, both of you finish, let's say, university at 22 years of age, 23, 21, it depends. That's for the BA. He still needs to, to hit the road and build himself and establish himself, and it might take a while. I mean, let me say that this is, in the Islamic worldview, he is responsible. Ultimately, his money is their money. Her money will always be her money, unless she absolutely willingly, talk about 100% free will, and she gives. And usually women they give everything, but they need to trust. They need a safe haven, security, if you will. So women are ready to get married. That's really so. If some man postpones his marriage for whatever condition he goes through until his let's say mid-30s, by that time she is almost done biologically. She still has just simply a few years. So her biological clock is ticking. So if the story of graduate school, PhD, or whatever, and she wants to fulfill herself in having a career and what have you, and she reaches the late 30s, she is really in a that's not the prime of her life in terms of becoming pregnant and giving birth. Same year, it's not the same thing for a male and a female. So not eating a lot will kill desire, as in the hadith. فَمَنْ لَا يَسْتَطِعْ فَعَلَيْهِ بِالصَّوْمِ فَإِنَّهُ لَهُ وِجَاءٌ. The next, sleeping briefly purifies your aspirations. I don't know about sleeping briefly. Okay. What does it mean? So people might misinterpret this. One thing, at least, you don't really overdo it. You don't oversleep. So when in scientific literature they keep talking about the 8 hours mark, it could be just a little bit less, maybe just a little bit more. If you talk about adolescents, maybe. But the idea is you have a certain number of hours that you do need. I have seen scholars who would give lectures almost throughout the day. I've been in the company of some scholars who are very active, but I've seen those scholars sleeping literally while they were giving the lecture after the dawn, after Fajr, after dawn prayer. Literally, they would fall asleep during the lecture. That's not healthy, I would say. So yes, one could basically encourage herself to have to inshallah pray during the very last 1/3 of the night, just before Fajr. But you do need to sleep. If you go for a long time without sleeping, I think it will have an impact on your alertness and on your productivity, etc. Wallahu a'lam. Speaking little saves you from afflictions. Of course. First of all, he who speaks a lot might, not necessarily, might make more mistakes. That's might offend, might. There's no need for you to speak to everyone about your future plans, especially if they. What happens if you cannot really fulfill these plans? What if they? There are extreme cases, but if one really أمسك عليك هذا in the hadith about the tongue. Hold your tongue. Don't. It shouldn't be like a loose cannon. It might also reflect certain psychological problems. Those who would speak continuously. So sometimes silence is more vocal than those who keep talking. And the fourth one is tolerating wrongs will bring you to the goal. For the hardest thing for a man is to be mild when snubbed, and to tolerate the wrongs which are done against him. I think to in to endure, to tolerate, to endure احتمال الأذى. It's more about endurance. It's more about perseverance. It's more about yes, you need to be tough. Life is tough, but also here in this sense احتمال الأذى, because that's not really your. It's not your fight. People might hurt you, but that's not your fight. Focus on your goals. For the hardest thing for a man is to be mild when snubbed, and to tolerate the wrongs which are done against him, and when they wish to indulge your desires, and sin steers in your soul, and the delight of superfluous discourse is aroused. Superfluous. You should draw the sword of eating little from the scabbard of the midnight prayer, and sleeping briefly, and smite them with the fists of obscurity and silence, until they cease to oppress you and avenge themselves upon you, and you become safe from their vicissitudes to the end of your days, having cleansed them of the darkness of the soul's desires, so that you escape from their hazardous afflictions. At this, you will become a subtle spiritual body and a radiance without weight, and shall roam in the field of goodness, traveling the paths of obedience to God, like a swift horse in the field, and the king taking his recreation in a garden. He also said, meaning Yahya bin Mu'adh al-Razi, man has three enemies: the world, the devil, and the soul. Be on your guard against the world through renunciation, against the devil by disobeying him, and against the soul by abandoning desire. A sage once said, the man who is ruled by his soul is a prisoner of war in the well of his desires, as incarcerated in the gaol of his whims, which govern and lead him wherever they wish by means of a halter which lies in their hand, so that his heart is denied all benefit. In the a prisoner of war in the well of his desires. If the word is jub, then it's the في غيابات الجب. That will be a well. How about if it's a hub? It depends on the manuscript that you are reading. So both are possible. It is simply one dot. So jub, hub, they look the same, except that jub, the well, has a dot. Allahu alam. So either a prisoner of war in the love of his desires, but Job the well might be the correct one, but the other one, it does exist. Hub. Said Ja'far ibn Muhammad, the scholars and the sages all concur that pleasure cannot be gained save through the renunciation of pleasure. The scholars and the sages all concur that the pleasure cannot be gained save through the pronunciation of pleasure. Sounds like a contradiction. أجمعت العلماء والحكماء على أن النعيم لا يدرك إلا بترك النعيم. I'm not sure that at this point that the word pleasure is the uh, most accurate translation. النعيم بترك النعيم. The ultimate na'im is that of the Jannah, of paradise, in the hereafter. So you are giving up at least, if you it's an amazing thing that some youngsters, maybe many, they do not want to invest enough time, enough energy, yeah, in building their future, and they become minimalists once it comes to the big projects. I saw just simply a title, but I did not really venture into going beyond the title that suggests suggestions, really, advice to elderly people to how to live, to live, uh, how to have an impact, really, not only on their lives but on life in general. Okay, meaning like to the benefit, to the good of the society. But this advice should be to the youngsters, how to have an impact. Grand, projects, aspirations. Uh, there was one scholar who said once, uh, أبيت سهران الدجى وتبيت نوما وتبغي بعد ذاك الحاقي. I spend the night up studying, work as a scholar, studying, working as. Uh, it doesn't say. It doesn't say studying. Simply says, I stay up throughout the night, and you spend the whole night in sleeping, and then you would like to catch up with me. You would like to be on the same level. It doesn't work like this. And we do have this proverbial, really. من طلب العود سهر الليالي. If you seek the higher place, if you like to be an achiever, then you need to spend your nights, at least part of these nights, in studying and working. But Naim covers not only sources of comfort, pleasure, but also that which is mubah, that which is permissible, and which could also become a distraction. Said Abu Yahya al-Warraq, al-Warraq is literally someone who make waraq, paper, and the paper industry began reaching the as an industry, not the paper itself. So the industry itself, to my knowledge, began around the 8th century. Uh, and the so within a couple of 100 years of the Islamic calendar. Okay, that's the beginning. So Abu Yahya al-Warraq, who said, "Whosoever gratifies his members by indulging in desire, has planted the tree of regret in his heart." من أرضى الجوارح بالشهوات فقد غرس في قلبه شجرة الندامات. It rhymes in Arabic. Said Wahab, "Everything more than bread is desire." And that's very austere. Uh, the text that I have, it's really both statements, this one and the next one, were mentioned by Wahib ibn Ward. Okay, both. Wahib ibn Ward. Imam Ghazali elsewhere mentions someone who prepared uh, in one sitting a loaf of bread for every day of the year, but he prepared all of them at once, like 360 loaves of bread in once, and he dried them, not baked them. He dried them, so there'll be no more moist in them, and they will not get rotten. In one sitting, prepared the food of 1 year, and he said that every day he would soak one of these loaves in water and will just simply eat it as is. يتبلغ به, to subsist. That's really the it's tough. We know that the Prophet ﷺ, never complained about the type of food presented to him. This is why he praised vinegar, when it was the only thing that was presented to him as a dip. So bread and vinegar, and he praised vinegar. نعم الإدام والخل. But we know also that the Prophet ﷺ, drank milk. We know that he ate dates. We know that there are certain foods that he used to make certain drinks, and he loved eating from the if you talk about meat, لحم الكتف, so the shoulder. So he did eat meat. And the thing is, if you'd like to do something on your own, that's fine. Don't push it on your family, and don't push it as a norm. That's also one can simply think about the all the things that the Prophet ﷺ ate. So simply so that people will not really go into extremes. Don't overindulge. That's very important. I know that the Prophet ﷺ also loved to eat honey. Okay, but if you think about the advice of the Prophet ﷺ, you don't simply fill your stomach with food. The advice is one third for food, one third for water, and one third should be left empty. And he said that suffices the human being few bites. بحسب من آدم لقيمات يقمن عوده. That's at the beginning of that the hadith. If you have to, then one third, one third, one third. It is related that after Joseph, Yusuf alayhi salam, had been set in charge of the storehouses of the land. This is after after the end of the story. Uh, After the end of the prison term and the his plight with the wife of Al-Aziz, um, and after he interpreted the dream about the seven years of good yield and 7 years of famine, of drought. Uh, After he interpreted this to the Aziz ultimately, and after he clearing his name from the woman accusation, uh, he became like we might say like the minister for the economy in Egypt at the time. This is the meaning of جعلني على خزائن الأرض, the storehouses of the land. And during the economic cycle was 14 years, and then relief. And during a state procession in which he rode with some 12,000 of the nobles of his kingdom, Potiphar's wife, Imrat al-Aziz, who was seated on a nearby eminence, said, "Glory be to him who enslaves kings, who disobey him, and makes slaves into kings when they obey him. سبحان من جعل الملوك عبيدا بالمعصية وجعل العبيد ملوكا بطاعتهم له." So literally it would be, glory be to him who enslaves kings, who disobey him, who disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who disobey God, بالمعصية, by sinning. Okay? And obedience would lead them to become kings, who make slaves into kings. Because remember that Yusuf alayhi salam was literally bought. There was a price for him. And not even a large sum of money. Those who sold him did not really ask for too much. He was a kid, and he was not really of any use. This is why uh, uh, Potiphar said when they bought him, uh, we might basically benefit, meaning in the future. Hopefully, عسى أن ينفعنا. Hopefully, he will be of some benefit, servant, or we consider him, adopt him as a son, أو نتخذه ولدا. Now Joseph, Yusuf alayhi salam, replied, إنه من يتقي ويصبر فإن الله لا يضيع أجر المحسنين. Whosoever has piety and steadfastness, God shall not cause the reward of those who do good be lost. Alhamdulillah, this is enough for the session, inshallah, and we will continue with Al-Junaid after the story of Yusuf alayhi salam. We'll continue in the next session with Al-Junaid, still within the same chapter, the an exposition of the evidence handed down from men of spiritual insight and provided the law to the effect that the way to cure diseases of the heart is by renouncing one's desires, and that the stuff of such diseases is following desires. This is now, we have reached the bottom of page 58, and the story of the statement of Junaid, the story of Junaid begins towards the end of that page. Until the next session, inshallah, subhanakallah wa bihamdik, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.